What doing today? Excellent. Another day, another live stream, exciting times. We are finally going to get to see some drift. Super excited for today, guys. Okay, let's fix my hat. Let's go up. Be hipster Joe today. How's everyone doing? Let me know in the chat that everything's a-okay. Audio and visuals all good. Get a quick drink. Okay. Who we got here today? I see we got a dozen or so people online. Score. Anyone in the chat? We're up. There we are. Matthias. Thank you, Matthias. I'll let everybody know Matthias was the first person to purchase Drift. I think he bought it last week when he knew I was making the product pages. He figured it out. And thank you, Scott. Mr. Scott Williams is here. Mr. Scott's got some cool tricks up his sleeves for everyone in the community pretty soon. Hopefully pretty soon. I don't know the exact release date, but yes, Mr. Scott's going to come out with something pretty awesome. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll get him on the live stream when he's ready to ship it. So that'll be fun. Willie, thank you. Rian, thank you. So yeah, today, Drift is ready to go. Okay. So, if you haven't known, I've been working on Drift for I think the first version of Drift is actually running on Weaverspace/start, right? So if you go to Weaverspace/start, you'll notice as you scroll down the page, there's, the Wrap Weaver icon, the Stacks icon, the Weaverspace icon, and they kind of float there as you're scrolling, right? And that was first version of Drift 4 years ago, okay? Yeah, I think it was 4 years ago. Yeah, I never released it because I was like, oh man, I just did the simple stuff. I wanted to make it better. And then, Foundation 6 happened and all that jazz. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to get Drift done. And then I wrote it again. I actually completely rewrote it from scratch. Did it with Foundation 6 swatches and all that jazz. And it was cool, but it wasn't quite right yet. So I scrapped it and started it all over again. So the version we are currently going to look at is technically version 3. This is Drift 3.0. And so yeah, I'm excited to finally get it out in the world. I think it's pretty awesome. And as you'll see, there are actually 2 versions of Drift. Okay, because hey Gunter, thanks for popping in. And Gracian, thank you for coming on. Thank you. So there are 2 versions of Drift. So it was probably a little over a month ago. I was ready to ship Drift, right? And I was like, okay, I'm going to start showing this off at the Hangouts on Fridays. If you're not joining us for the Hangouts on Fridays, you get to see cool early stuff like I'm going to talk about right now. So I showed off Drift, and everyone was blown away by what awesome things you can do with it, right? But at the same time, I can see the more novice users kind of had this deer in headlights look, right? Oh my goodness, that's quite a bit of work, right? So someone who had an early version of the alphas of Drift, I think it was the first version of Drift I had, Wolf was like, Joe, I like the simplicity of that. I like all the power of the new features that we have, but can we also get the simplicity of what the old version was? And so I was like, oh no. So I was kind of back to the drawing board, right? And so I was like, well, I'm not rewriting this because I was like, the version that I had done and showed off, man, it was freaking cool, right? Really cool. But I'm like, okay, what can I do to rework this? And so what I did is I came up with 2 versions of Drift. We have Drift and Drift Pro. Okay. 2 wildly different not wildly different, there are two different products. Okay. And yeah, let's show them off right now. So you guys don't want to hear me talk about it. Let's actually see some action, right? So let's go ahead and while the stacks don't show up inside of the main stacks page yet, the product pages are all live. Okay. You can go and purchase them right now. And I still have, I should say, the only thing I really have left, I shipped the official version 1.0 last night, in the quietly, right, to no fanfare yet. I just need to record a bunch of videos. So this is going to be the first one. This actually, a lot of stuff I'm doing today is kind of going to be a little practice run for when I record the official videos. I currently have 18 videos planned for Drift and Drift Pro. So I'll probably get the basics of it done hopefully this week. And I'll probably ship it to the community this week, and then, you know, get a bunch more videos done next week, and then maybe ship it, you know, official announcement to the world that it's out there next week, so that you know, the emails and all that jazz. So probably by Friday, you can go right now. Obviously, it's weaverspace/stacks/drift. Okay. It doesn't show up in the main stacks page yet. It will probably by Friday. Okay. I want to get at least like a main overview video here. Okay. And there's also, conversely, there's also Drift Dash Pro. Okay. If you want to look at these here, I'll put these in the chat as well. Why not plop these in the chat since I'm talking about them right now? You can go ahead and check them out. Okay. Then the only thing I need to do is get the kind of the videos done for this. So let's look at Drift first, and then we'll pop over to Drift Pro. And first, I'm not even going to show you how to implement the stacks. I'm just going to show you what they can do. Okay. Because it's a lot. So let's go ahead. Let's scroll down. As you see here, you can go through all the features and whatnot. We'll kind of go over that today in the video. So first off, let me just say that these demos on this page, like I hemmed and hawed a lot about these demos, because Drift can do so much that it was hard to come up with, to show you to the extent of what Drift can do. It's kind of like Foundation 6 swatches. I mean, there's so much you can do with Foundation 6 swatches that it would be impossible to give you a demo of the breadth of what Foundation 6 swatches can do. Okay. For those of you who don't know what Foundation 6 swatches are, you're missing out. Go check them out. Okay. But similar here. So what I decided was, you know what? I'm going to do super simple demos to show you the raw basics of what you can do. So what I'm doing in a lot of these demos is I'm just animating little squares. Okay. But Drift allows you to animate whatever you want. Okay. So take this as, hey, here's a small little glimpse of what you can do with Drift. So in these demos, on the main Drift page, you just simply hover over and you hover on animate. Now, the Drift stack supports two different types of animations. You can animate based on scroll. You can also animate based on hover. A lot of the animations on here are on hover, so you can kind of hover over it and trigger the animation, and unhover to untrigger the animation, right? So you see here, this green square, it starts, you know, when you add a stack to a page, it kind of has a natural default location, okay? So we can take something from that default location and animate it to a new location. Okay, so that's what this animate to is. I'm taking this green square and I'm animating it 300 pixels. I think it's 300 pixels to the right, as well as you see, it's also rotating, right? So that just gives us an idea of how we can do, what we can do. Now, this just does something simple. It just moves it and rotates it. But you could do whatever you really, really want. Okay, we'll dive into it. You can basically animate any CSS property that you could think of with Drift, which is pretty awesome. So that's animating to. The next is animating from. Now, what is animate from? So what this is this purple square, its default location when I added it to the page is right here. And essentially animating from is sort of like more things you're going to do to animate something onto a page, right? So I'm animating it from this location. It basically like zooms out off the page, okay? And I'm animating it from that location to the element's default location, right? So kind of, this is going to be a lot of, if you want to animate something onto the page. So maybe as you scroll, the text can, fade in, or it can animate in, or, you have images that'll, whip in from somewhere, right? Okay. So animate from is sort of that, where you're going from one location to its default location. And again, with animate from, you can animate any CSS property that you can think of. There's a lot built into the stack, but you can do whatever you want with some advanced settings. Okay, next up is yo-yo and repeating. So you can yo-yo and repeat any animation. What is a yo-yo? So yo-yoing is basically saying, like, this particular orange square is rotating out 500 pixels or 300 pixels, whatever, and then it goes back. So it's yo-yoing. Okay, and this particular animation is also repeating. Okay, so when I hover over this animation, it goes out, comes back, and because I told it to repeat, it's going to do that yo-yo multiple times. In this case, infinitely. You can also do a certain amount of times as well. You can, pause between repeats and all that jazz, right? You can also pause between yo-yos. So there we go. There's a lot of settings, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit when I start diving into the stacks. Okay, next is the next demos are all about text animations. So these are animations specific for text. And I have two demos for this type text to kind of give you an idea of two different situations you do. This first one, when I hover over it, it takes text and it types new text on top of it. Okay, so you can kind of transform one text bit to another text bit, right? And the second animation starts off with nothing, and it basically types the text onto the page, right? This would be cool. Imagine you have just some headers on the page, and whenever someone scrolls in, the header automatically types out, right? Very cool animation. The next one is, I'll admit, this next one is a little gimmicky, but for certain situations, it's pretty cool. I've actually already seen a couple beta testers use scramble text in some very interesting ways. So essentially, I have what looks like jumbled encoded text on the page. And when I hover over it, it kind of does this matrixy thing, right? And animates that onto the page to be the text that I ultimately want it to be, right? So scramble text is a very interesting, probably not something we're going to use all the time, but hey, it's a pretty cool animation, right? Okay, this next one is kind of cream of the crop for splitting for text, okay? I have 3 different animations. And what split text do? First, let's look at the animations. So when I hover over it, we see we can do this thing where each individual word from the animation is actually animating in, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. This one, it takes a paragraph, and each line of the paragraph is animated in individually. And then the last one's pretty cool. If you play with this on your browser, it's super slick. It turns your text and makes it look like it's rubber, like it's totally elastic. Super amazing, super cool, okay? And what this one's doing is it's actually taking each individual letter in the paragraph and animating them individually. Pretty insane, okay? So if you didn't get what kind of split text does, is it takes a text, whether it's a header or a paragraph or whatever, and it splits it up into either per word, per line, or per character. And then you can animate those all individually. It's pretty nuts, right? So we'll see here in this line, I take each line and I animate it one after the other, right? So that's some really, really amazing text effects can be built with split text. This just gives you 3 examples. I think really nice examples. I love all of these examples here that you can do with split text. Okay. So next up is just to show you, I needed obviously to show some scroll-based animations. So we built something pretty cool. So we'll see this split test example here. It's the same demo that was up here, okay? But it just does it on scroll. So you see here's a nice one where that animation is triggered when it scrolls onto the page. Now, if you notice, when I scrolled, the entire animation happened, okay? But if we look at this green square, as I scroll, it's the animation of this green square tracks the scrolling of the web page. So there are two different types of scroll-based animations. This top one here, when it scrolled in, the animation triggered. And it just, I think this animation was probably 2 or 3 seconds. The animation just happens when it goes into the page. But this square, instead of the animation just happening, what it does is the animation is tracked. And you'll notice that as I scroll up or scroll down, the square will go backwards and forwards based on the scroll position. That gives us some really, really cool things, such as this animation here. Where with drift, you'll notice that as I'm scrolling up and down the page, I'm animating these clouds and balloons, okay, up and down. And what's really amazing here is not only that it's doing that, but you'll notice that when I stop scrolling, the animation continues a little bit. So that gives us what we call inertia, which gives us a really great effect, a really great parallax effect. If you notice here, the clouds are going sideways, but the balloons are going up. So we're animating things in different directions, and it's all being tracked based on the scrolling position of the page. So as I'm scrolling up, the balloons are going up, the clouds are going to the right. As I scroll down, the balloons are going back down, and the clouds are going to the left, right? And you'll notice that when the scrolling stops, the animation continues for a fraction of a second. I think I have this set to actually 2 seconds. So after I stop scrolling, the animation will continue for 2 more seconds, right? So it really makes our web pages feel alive, right? Where things are happening, and it's giving them that really great parallax effect that we've seen across many modern websites that we all love, right? So, and we'll see that this actually, James says the balloons demo is really cool. Yes, it's really, really awesome. And we're going to dive in and I'll show you how this was built. Okay. Okay. So that is drift. Okay. Those are all the stacks that you get with drift. And again, what is displayed here is just a sliver of what you can really, really do with drift. This is just the raw basics. Okay. I did show this balloon demo is definitely a real world scenario of how you could use drift, to animate things as you're scrolling and going down in the page and all that jazz. Okay. Now, what can we do with Drift Pro? So Drift Pro, let's go over to Drift Pro. Drift Pro can do everything that Drift can do, okay? And a lot more, okay? It can do a lot more. Now, the implementation of these stacks, which we'll dive into in a little bit, is very different, okay? The, ease of ness, is that even a word? I don't know, whatever. The ease of use, okay, is very different. Some things are actually easier with Drift Pro. For example, that balloon demo, I actually feel it's easier to implement that in Drift Pro. Maybe we'll dive into that today a little bit. Okay. All right. So what can Drift Pro do? Let's go to the demos. What you'll notice here is a lot of the demos in Drift Pro are the same. Okay. But with a slight twist. Okay. Because Drift can trigger things 3 different ways. Drift Pro. So with Drift, we have the ability to trigger animations on scroll and on hover, okay? But Drift Pro has a lot of flexibility. We can do scroll, we can do hover, but we can also do on click, okay? So I show this, and if you go to the Drift Pro demos, you'll notice if you hover over any of these demos, there's this little button that doesn't exist in the Drift demos, okay? And if you click on that, that unveils a few buttons down at the bottom. Now, these buttons are, this animation here is actually controlled with Drift Pro as well, okay? And actually, this control on every demo is all done with one Drift Pro stack. So basically I created this animation and this generic animation that I can then assign to as many things as I want. And I did that that's one power of Drift Pro. Okay. You can kind of create reusable animations really, really easily with Drift Pro. And here we'll see in this, there's a play pause, and then we can kind of go beginning and end of animation. And there's a lot more controls. There's about 12 different controls you can actually add to any button or link just with the class. Okay. So this is a smart play pause button. Okay. So you can, and this is basically go to the end, go to the beginning, and you can play and pause. Okay. Probably not a real life scenario. You probably wouldn't have a play pause button on your animation, on your website, but maybe you could, maybe, you can also do, play, but then not pause, right? So this is a smart play pause. So it knows whether or not it's playing and it'll pause it. If it's paused, it'll then play it. But you could just do like a start button, right? Which will just play the animation. If it's already going, it will just continue to go, right? So there's a lot of flexibility and power with the click and button controls. Okay. So you can play with all of these, with these demos. A lot of these demos, the Animate 2, it's exactly the same. The implementation is very different, but the demo that you're seeing here is exactly the same. Same thing with Animate From, and same thing with the repeat. Okay. Now we get into some demos that did not exist in Drift. And Drift Pro allows us to stagger our animations. So here I have an animation of 3 squares. I'm applying the same animation to all 3 squares here. Okay. Again, one Drift Pro stack assigned to all 3 squares. So that if I ever want to tweak it, I can always tweak it centrally. But I don't want these animations, when I hover over this box, I don't want the animations to kick off all at the same time, because I don't want 3 boxes to animate all at once. It doesn't really look interesting. Okay. So what we can do is we can stagger our starting times for our animations. So here I have, again, one Drift stack, and then I just tell, hey, Drift, when you find multiple of these things, just stagger the start times, right? And you can stagger it by a fraction of a second, or, it's very configurable. Okay. So here we have, again, 3 squares where the start times are going to be staggered. Okay. You can even define whether or not you want where it's going to start from. I currently have it set to random, so it'll randomly choose. Okay. But you can also say always start from the top. So we can go 1, 2, 3, or from the bottom up, right? So you have a lot of configurability with how staggers happen, and, whether or not it goes from top to bottom, left to right. If you have a full grid, which we're going to be looking at later on, you can even go from like the center of the grid to the outside of the grid. That's an amazing demo. Can't wait to show you that one. Okay. So staggers are very powerful. Drift Pro only feature. Basically, from everything, well, not everything, but a lot of what we're going to be seeing from now on is going to be Drift Pro specific. Okay, timelines. Now, this is something that makes Drift Pro crazy powerful. Okay, with Drift, you can do a single animation on a single element on your page, which is a lot of what we want. But with Drift Pro, we have the ability to do full animation timelines, meaning you can like animate object A, and then after that's finished, animate object B, and then half second before that's done, do this animation. So you can create entire timelines. Okay, if we hover over this, we'll see I'm animating these 5 squares, and I created an entire sequence of animations with Drift, right? So you see, and we can, reverse that entire animation as well. So all these squares are on top of each other. They kind of rotate and move around and create this thing. And then they animate as a unit. And then not only that, but at the end, after everything moved around, I even changed the color of everything. Like, that is pretty mind-blowing. Okay, this animation, I think, is the epitome of what Drift can do for you. Okay, now again, I'm just animating little squares here. Okay, but you can animate whatever you want. Okay, so very exciting. I'm super stoked to see what people start building with Drift. I've already started seeing what people are doing with the betas. So I'm really excited here. Okay, next up is type text. Now, we saw type text, and Drift Pro allows us to do a little bit more because we can do timelines. This particular animation is actually a timeline based animation using type text. Okay, so if you notice here, what it's doing is it's taking the last letters in this sentence and it's continuing to change them, right? So the last few words in the sentence, it changes. And so this is using type text, but it's also using something like this wouldn't be possible with Drift. Okay. Drift, it can type out an entire sentence or change an entire sentence. But if you want to target like the end of a sentence and then, continually animate it and change it to different things, that is now a timeline based animation because we're doing multiple things. And that would require Drift Pro. Okay. So exciting there. Next is scramble text. This is a little bit different. So in here, you'll notice the colors of the text are changing. And you can actually do that with Drift as well, where you can assign a class to different states of scramble so that you can style the text in different ways. So here I'm leveraging that with Drift Pro where, the text is blue. And then when it's done, it animates to or it changes to orange, right? So that's pretty cool. Okay, split text. In Drift, I did this 3 separate demos because Drift, again, like I said, Drift can only do animations one at a time. Okay, but here I created a small little timeline of split text. So here we'll see that I animated the text in, then it explodes out. And then I animate different text in using the different animation, right? And then those animate out. And then it animates all of them, this text in again separately. So really exciting there. It's pretty interesting. Again, slightly different effect. It uses the same, but you're using the timeline ability to kind of create this little slider effect, really. So we can kind of, animate text in, animate it out, animate new text in, animate new text out, right? It's pretty cool. So as you see, the text animations themselves are very similar to Drift, but because of the timeline and some other abilities with Drift Pro, we can kind of take it to the next level. Okay, next one, path animations. This is another exclusive to Drift Pro. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to animate anything we want. Here I'm just animating a Weaver Space logo along a path, okay? So here is a S-curve SVG image, and I'm showing you this image on purpose so you can kind of see it. Obviously, if this was alive on your website, you wouldn't show, you'd have 0 color on this SVG stroke, right? The stroke of this SVG would be transparent, so you wouldn't see the path at all. But it allows you to create a custom path, okay, with SVGs. Okay, I have a couple baked in ones, such as, you can animate it on a circle. So if you want something to kind of like, kind of hover on the page in a circle motion, that's something baked in. I don't have a demo of that here, but we can show you that. It's easy enough. But this allows you to supply, again, a custom SVG and then animate anything you want along the path of that SVG, which is pretty crazy. All right, next up is draw SVG. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to take any SVG that we want and we can animate the stroke of that, right? So here I have just some simple SVG shapes where I have a circle, an oval, a square, and a little angle. And you notice that as I hover and unhover, the outlines or the stroke of those SVGs are drawn. Pretty crazy, right? Super, super cool. All right, the last one is get prepared to get your mind blown. If you thought what was cool already was like this morph SVG is amazing because this allows us to morph one shape, one SVG into another SVG. Now I have a pretty simple example here, but I've seen some pretty complex stuff done with morph SVG and it's pretty mind blowing. Okay. So as you see, if I hover over this square, it morphs into a star. Hover out, and not only that, like it animates, and it's actually like making that shape fluid and elastic. It's just mind-blowing and magical. Okay, it really is. Now, I should say that these 3 demos, the path animations, especially if you want to use custom paths and whatnot, right? And the draw SVG and the morph SVG, you can't be scared of using SVGs and typing in some SVG code and maybe adding some classes into your SVG. Okay, it's not like extremely hard, and I'll have videos on how to do that. And I actually have some debugging tools for morph to kind of fine tune your morphing animations, as well as for motion path. There's actually a path generator, okay, which allows you to, we'll play around with it. It's pretty amazing. Where you can actually, it starts off with an S curve, but then you can like change the path and all that jazz. Pretty mind blowing. It's awesome. But yeah, with these 3 stacks, you really have to be comfortable with SVG and maybe adding an ID or a class or something. I do have some sample files, an Affinity Designer file that shows you how to do like this particular one, how that's accomplished. And we'll have a video specifically on these, obviously, to kind of show you how to use them and debug them and troubleshoot them, to the best of our ability. Okay. Now to some real world, stuff here. So scroll-based animations. This is a very similar one to the drift. And if you notice here, I did tweak it just a little bit. So basically, if you notice here, some of these balloons, as I scroll up the page, some balloons go up, some balloons go down. And in this example, it's using some pretty interesting features of Drift Pro that allow us to do like random values. Okay, so if you were to refresh the page and go to this demo again, every time you load the page, the animation is a little bit different. Okay, so yeah, it's pretty interesting. These balloons, some go up, some go down, some go up and down at different sizes and different rates. And same thing with the clouds. The clouds are more subtle. I think the clouds in this demo don't move quite as much as the drift demo. I did that kind of on purpose. I thought it was interesting to see them a little bit more subtle, right? They do move, but they're more subtle than the normal drift demo. But obviously, if you like the more elaborate moving, the more in your face cloud movement, you can change that. And what's awesome is this entire thing is done with 2 Drift Pro animation stacks. That's it. There's one animation for the clouds, for all the clouds, and then there's one for all of the balloons. Right, so this was accomplished with 2 Drift Pro stacks, whereas on the Drift one we had a drift stack for each cloud, a drift stack for each balloon, and each one was controlled individually. Whereas here in Pro, because we have more flexibility, we can do that with less stacks, which is interesting. Okay, now I have one last demo to do, and this is that I said earlier how we have this advanced stagger. So here I just created this grid of, squares, and I just wanted to show you kind of what stagger can do. So I have one Drift Pro stack assigned to this grid, and it's intelligently staggering those animations, and it's starting kind of from the middle and going outwards, right? This is pretty mind-blowing, right? And imagine, I haven't done this yet with a gallery, but imagine you had a gallery on the page, or a page just had a ton of images and it was just going, oh dude, this is really awesome. And you can trigger it based on scroll and all that. It's pretty mind-blowing. I'm super, super happy with Drift. Okay. And then obviously we have the screenshots, and that's this live stream. Okay. So that is all. I mean, I spent a lot of time just showing off what Drift can do. We have about a half hour left. Maybe I can go a little longer. But let's dive into RapidWeaver and kind of show you how things are done. Okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat room. Thank you for the compliments, James. I appreciate that. It's always fun having you at the Hangouts on Fridays. Okay. Let's close this up. Let's go to Rapid Weaver. And let's open up the Drift Pro. Now, this is the project file that comes with Drift Pro. Okay. I actually have some demos in this file that aren't even on the website. So maybe we'll look at those really quick. And these demos are built in Foundation 6. I know not everyone has Foundation 6. But yeah, sorry. It's just what I use. It's how I build my demos. And I give these out as a nice thing, as a here's some work I did sort of thing, right? So Drift does work inside any theme. It is not specific to Foundation 6, but this demo file is built using Foundation 6. Okay. So you can take out the individual demos. Obviously the Drift demos are will work in anything. Okay. And obviously watch the videos as well. Okay. As they come out. As of today, they don't exist, but they will very soon. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's look at some new ones. Okay. That weren't in this demo. So Drift and Drift Pro work amazing with Total CMS. Okay. So let's say you wanted to animate, and here I'm using a Drift type stack. So this is, if you notice here I should show, okay, Drift comes with, now when you buy Drift, you'll get Animate, Scramble, Split Text, and Type. Drift Pro is Drift Timeline. Okay. So that is what Drift Pro is. Now, I should also add, I didn't say this earlier, when you buy Drift Pro, you get Drift. So you don't need to buy both. If you buy Drift Pro, you get Drift. So when you buy Drift Pro, you get all of these stacks. Okay. You actually get both stacks to download and install. So yeah. And if you buy Drift and later on you decide you want Drift Pro, you can always upgrade. Okay. So there's an upgrade cost to go from Drift to Drift Pro. You save a little bit of money if you buy them both up front though. Okay. So in this example, I'm using Drift Type. Okay. And I'm just putting it inside of a Total CMS blog list. And I'm using the blog list macros inside of Drift Type. Okay. And let's go ahead and preview that. So here I have an image. These couple blog posts actually didn't have images. It's just test data. So as you see here, as I scroll the page, the titles animate in and type as they scroll into the page, right? Pretty cool. So that's just one example of what you can do with Drift and Total CMS, right? So really exciting. That's just a simple example of, typing out. You can use all of the scramble, split text, timeline. You can use them with, as you see here, I'm using it with the title, but maybe you want to animate the image or something like that. You can definitely do that as well. Okay. Let's see, Drift Pro. That was that. Let's see, motion path. I think do I have? Oh, here's an example of motion path with circle. Okay, so I know I haven't dived into the stacks to kind of explain them yet, but here in Drift Timeline, I'm adding motion path, and I set the path to circle. So if we preview this, we'll see that the Weaver Space logo here is just kind of floating there, and it's just gonna go into a circle. Pretty cool, right? So yeah, it's just a way of kind of just allowing something to kind of float there. You can define the size. Right now, I have it floating a little bit small. It's just 10 pixels. If I were to increase this to, let's do 100 pixels just to kind of show you. It's gonna, so it's going in a much bigger circle, right? So what's also interesting is you can also auto rotate to path, right? So what this is doing. So what motion path allows you, this one is just taking the icon and it's just rotating it, right? But if I do this auto rotate to path, what this does is it takes and it rotates the icon around the path. So it's kind of a different, that's kind of what I did on the S curve in the other demo, where the icon kind of flowed and rotated along with the path. It's pretty interesting. Okay. This one doesn't really work well with a circle animation, but just kind of wanted to show you what that was really quick. Okay. Okay. Pre-split. There's a bunch of utility stacks that come with Drift Pro, and one of them is called pre-split text. Man, try to say that 10 times fast. Okay. So what is this? This is a really cool demo. Okay. Let's just show it off. Okay. So here I have a demo, and we have a image at the top, and as I scroll down the page, we'll see that all of this text is dynamically animating in each line at a time as you go onto the page. Someone wanted to build a website that mimicked this, and I was like, I think we could do that with Drift Pro. So I had to create a little helper stack, this pre-split text. But we did it. And look, it only took two stacks, and we assigned a class to this header, and that we're done. That was it. Pretty amazing. Okay. So you get this demo. I think this is just the bee's knees. That's just really cool. And as you notice, as I scroll down, they kind of go out. I mean, that is really, really cool. Awesome stuff there. Okay. Next one, I haven't finalized this demo yet. It does some tricky kind of advanced CSS stuff, but I really wanted it. I wanted to see if it was done. I'm not done trying to make it better, but here we go. We got some Star Wars text, right? So I know there's probably a lot of Star Wars fanboys here and geeky boys and girls. Sorry. And so, yeah, there we go. Here is how we can do a Star Wars-esque animating of some text on a page. So pretty cool. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I don't think it's perfect yet. I'll probably over time I'll tweak it and play with it. It's not perfect, but I'm really happy with how it worked out so far. So there we go. There's some Star Wars text. The panel inspector is not visible on the screen. Oh, shoot. My screen. Oh, I'm sorry about that. My screen is, oh no. Thank you for stating that. Let me fix that really quick. Thank you for stating that before we got too far. There we go. Sorry about that, Massimo. Okay. Hopefully it didn't go too far before. Well, we got a little bit farther in. Okay, next one is responsive animations. And this is something I actually just added yesterday. And I should probably note that originally this was going to be a pro-only feature. And I decided that, well, you know what? Once I implemented it, I was like, you know what? This would be really cool for Drift as well. So we now have responsive animations for Drift and Drift Pro. What is a responsive animation, you might ask? Okay, so I have two examples here. The top one uses Drift Pro, and the bottom one uses Drift. So what is this? So what it means is in Drift Pro, it's a little bit nicer. Okay, it means that you can change the animation based on a breakpoint. Now, this particular feature is a Foundation 6 only feature. Okay. Foundation 6 exposes some, responsive breakpoints to a JavaScript API, and all Drift uses is JavaScript. So, instead of building it, maybe eventually Drift can get this natively, but right now this is a Foundation 6 only feature. Okay. And as you see, you can configure animations for all devices by default. You can disable it. You can have it running on small, medium, large only, and then small, medium, and medium large. Okay. So you can, in this example here, let's see, I'm animating this green square, and on small devices, I'm animating it 300 pixels. And then on medium and large devices, I'm animating it 600 pixels. Okay. So let's preview that. So as you see here, it's animating 600 pixels. Okay, and if we go into, let's just go to responsive design mode. Now, if you change the browser size, all this happens on page load. So you'd have to if I do this animation now, if you notice the green goes off the screen, it's because I've changed my browser size from desktop size to mobile. Okay, so it doesn't recognize browser resizing. So everything is done on page load. So if you notice now that I've reloaded the page, the animation only goes 300 pixels. Okay. Now we'll notice here, in Drift, the way I had to implement the stack, it's a little bit different in that Drift animate. Well, I haven't gone into show you how to implement these stacks at all yet. So I'm kind of going off into a little confusing tangent possibly. But the way Drift is implemented, we can only have one Drift animate stack because you put the content that you want to animate inside of it. Now, I did play around with having like a Drift animate inside of a Drift animate, and some things work okay and some things don't. Okay, so for right now, by default, when you put in Drift animate, you just state what animation this is going to work on. So right now, this animation works on medium and large for this orange one. Okay, so if you notice on mobile, it doesn't animate at all. Okay, but if I go up to desktop mode and reload the page, it animates now. Right, so this is, again, the responsiveness is a little bit more user friendly in Drift Pro, but at least we have something that we can have from a responsive nature using Drift. Now, if you really wanted, you could probably do some visibilities, so you can have this orange square twice on the page, show a different instance of it for small that has a different animation assigned to it. But it is much easier with Drift Pro. Because I can turn on and off unique animations. Okay. Let me get a drink of water here, or Gatorade here. So let's go ahead and let's just show you the difference for animating something with Drift versus Drift Pro. Okay. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to create a new project so I don't mess up that project file. Okay, and just because I love me some Foundation 6, we're gonna do that. All right. All right, and we're gonna go to Drift. So with Drift, let's just do a simple animation. Okay, so we're gonna do an animate. Actually, here, let's go to. I'm just gonna add some content to the page here. And I'm just going to add some H:50 VH just to make some blank content so that we can animate this around. And for fun, I'm actually going to turn on overflow on this so we can animate this, whatever we're going to add into here. So let's just go ahead. I'm going to animate let's use Foundation 6 stack since we're in Foundation 6 mode. I'm going to add a picture. And then here we're going to add in, we'll just do a Weaver Space logo. How about that? Wham. There we go. Weaver Space logo. And we're going to center it. Okay. So here inside Drift Animate, whatever you throw into the stack, that's what gets animated. Okay. Let's go ahead and we go to Drift Animate. And actually, I'm going to turn off the center image because maybe we'll animate it to the side or something like that. So in here, by default, it's animated on scroll. We can also do it on hover, right? So let's just do it on scroll, on page load. If something is visible on page load, when you have it set to scroll, it'll animate on page load, basically. Okay, so we'll keep it that. And so here's the settings. So this has a lot of the kind of all the things you could potentially want to move things around the page. Right, so we can move it by the x-axis and the y-axis. We can scale it, which is shrinking and growing. We can skew it, which I'll be honest, I don't have too much use case for skewing, but that's obviously like skewing something on the x and y-axis. You can rotate things and change the opacity. Okay, and then we can do from or to. let's do 2 so that on page load it goes to something. Okay. So we're going to animate to a particular location. You'll notice at the type, you can also do a 3D based animation, which changes some of these controls. It gives us a little bit extra. So if you've ever done 3D animation, there's a perspective, which is basically like, think of it as how like far or close you are from the browser, right? So your animation is going to look drastically different potentially if you're doing a 3D animation based on the perspective. Okay. That gives us some, we can move something on the Z-axis, as well as it gives us some more rotation, right? So we can rotate something. If you looked at Quick Flip actually uses some 3D animations. It actually uses the same library that Drift uses, but it's special just for animating things in 3-dimensional and flipping them. So you can get somewhat close to that with something with Drift. I mean, Quick Flip does a lot of specialized things just for that flipping animation, right? But so there's that. So let's just deal with 2D animations for right now. Okay, so you'll notice in Move X, there's a percentage and a pixel. So if I do 100%, that basically is 100%. So it's going to take the size of your content and it's going to animate it 100%. So this icon, if it's 100 pixels, it's going to move 100 pixels to the right. Okay. If I wanted to move it 100 pixels to the right, 100%. So basically 100% is kind of a dynamic thing. 100% is the width of your content. So if I did 200%, okay, it'll animate basically double the width of the content. Okay, same thing for height. Okay, and then this is pixels. So if you only wanted to move something 50 pixels over, you could do 50 over there with 0 of that, right? If you wanted to move it the width of the content plus 50 pixels, this gives us a little bit of flexibility. Okay, and let's just see what that does, right? So on page load, it moves the width of the image plus 50 pixels, right? And if we're going to go 150, we'll move down and over. So now it goes diagonally because we're going from one position to the next. Pretty cool. And if we wanted to add a small rotation of that, let's rotate it 360 degrees. It rotates. And then if we wanted to scale it, let's go like to 1.5. All right. We want to scale it on both so that it scales uniformly. Okay. So there it scales and rotates and grows all at once. So you see, it's really, really simple. Now, one thing I'm not going to dive into today is this custom animation attributes. This allows us to do a bunch of stuff. This is probably a little bit more powerful inside Drift Pro. I'll be perfectly honest. I added these settings here into Drift, but they're much more useful in Drift Pro. Okay. Next up is our timing. We can add a delay, obviously a duration. All this is in seconds. We can do our repeats, and we can also, as I said, yo-yo, right? So if I want to do a yo-yo animation, in order to yo-yo, you have to repeat one time. So it's going to go there and then back. Okay. And the repeat delay is 1 second. So let's just go ahead and preview that. When it goes there, 1 second, and then it goes back. So that's, again, that yo-yoing animation. And then all of the timing curves. So there's a lot of different timing functions that you can use. And yeah, there is if you go to the tooltip in here, there's a URL that kind of gives you a demo of what all of these timing animations are. And for fun, actually, let's just go there. Okay. And I should note that Drift is all built. A lot of my animations that I built out for the past couple of years have been using something called Green Sock. And it is the epitome of animations for the web. It's kind of like the de facto standard, what all cool kids are using. Let's see. Ease is. All right. This is the oops. Here we go. This is the web page that's inside that tooltip. The URL is in the tooltip. Okay. And you can kind of play. You'll see there's power 1, power 2, power 3, power 4. And then there's also, you can do in, out, and out. Okay. So that's, again, all of these. And then the timing curve in, out, out. And you can kind of see that here in these animations, you'll see this ball. You'll notice how, let's go to power 1, or actually let's go to none, which is linear, okay? You'll see that animation, it moves at a constant rate, okay? But if we go to power 4, you'll notice that it goes fast and then it starts slowing down towards the end. It takes the same amount of time to get from A to B, but the path in which it takes it is very different. Okay. So that's what I know. Easing kind of confuses a lot of people, but that's essentially what it is. And this is a great representation of what the easing timing functions are. Some of the fun ones, there's elastic, right? Which kind of goes past the point and then kind of comes and bounces, right? I have some demos with elastic. It's fun for certain things. Okay. There's also bounce, right? Which kind of gives you a bouncing motion, right? So yeah, very cool. Back is actually a very nice one because it's a very natural thing. If you're moving, a lot of times things don't move and then stop, right? If it's going fast, it can move and go past a little bit and it'll be like, oh, I went too fast and come back, right? So that's kind of what back is. So anyway, and the type in out also changes drastically. So out will always go fast and then finish slowly. If you go in, that goes slowly and then goes fast. And then in out will do slow, fast, slow. Right? So anyway, that's kind of this is a very great indicator if you want to play around with easing and whatnot and learn more about what these functions are. Chances are you'll probably pick a couple that you like and just kind of stick to those. Okay. So there we go. That's easing. Okay, so that was the Drift Animate stack. We're running low on time. You can go ahead and look at the demos here. You'll notice that for split text and scramble and split text, a lot of these you drag those onto the page and then you edit your text here. Okay, and then you go ahead and you select what type of element it is. Since you have to type in the text here, I allow you to define what type of it is. So it's a paragraph or it's an H1 or so on and so forth. Okay. And then all the various settings for these things. Okay. So there's, I'm not going to go through every single possible demo because I want to get into Drift Pro to show you what the differences are there. Split text, same thing. Whether or not you want to split by characters, words, or lines. Okay. And if you notice here, the animation settings are very similar to the Animate stack. They're actually identical. Okay. Because this allows you to set these animation settings for each character, word, or line. You get to animate all three of those things individually, even if you type in an entire paragraph. And then same thing for type text. Okay. You can define whether or not it, what it is here, and then all the very options for type text. Okay. Let's look at Drift Pro, and let's just go ahead, and I'm gonna use an existing example here, and we're gonna look at that animation of all those boxes that we're animating, right? So here, let's show you what animation we're looking at. So in this particular one here, let's look at how this animation was built. Okay. So let's look at the styles here. Here I just have a container, and then here I have all of those boxes. Okay, and these are all styled using Foundation 6 swatches that just make them a box. Okay, and they all have classes. So we have this particular one has box purple, box 5. Okay, so each of them has the box class, which essentially sets the size and stuff like that. Then they have a color class that defines what color it is. Okay, if you really want to see all that's inside this demo as well somewhere, I think I have it up here. Here, right? So I have box, which sets the width and height, and then I have various colors, and I set margins on it and all that jazz, the rounded corners. So that's what the box does. And then the colors define the colors. Okay. Now, on top of that, each of these boxes has a box 1 class, a box 2 class, a box 3 class, box 4, box 5. That's so I can target individual boxes or sets of boxes, right? at a time. And here is drift timeline. So let's just add drift timeline to the page just so you can kind of see it. And when you add drift timeline, you define your triggers on the timeline level. So whether or not you want scroll, click, or hover, and the trigger positions, and you have all kinds of more advanced options inside Drift Pro, okay, that we don't have inside Drift. I allow you to tweak pretty much anything. Okay, there isn't much you can't configure. And then inside timeline, you can just add all of these available, things. All right, so here by default, it just adds an animate, but you can add maybe a draw SVG, right? And then after that, you want to split some text. So you can add these animations and have them happen one after another. Okay, so let's look at this existing one that I have here. Here, I create a couple timeline labels. This timeline label is a simple helper to allow you to add a label to a specific time. So for example, I created a timeline label called purple, and that starts at 0.2 seconds within the overall timeline animation. Then I have orange, which actually happens 0.7 seconds after purple. So here's an example of how we can define labels. And then inside, and that's all done with this timing position. Okay. By default, this plus equals 0 means start this animation after the previous one finished. But we have a lot of flexibility here. Okay. So if we notice here, this particular animation is starting it all off. I'm moving the box one, which is this, I think it's this, is it the blue box? What is it? Yeah, the blue box. So the very first thing is blue box moves, and it moves 100 pixels, 100% plus 8 pixels to the right. And then, and that animation goes for 0.5 seconds. And then I have this next one happens at purple. Okay. So at purple plus 0, so that's at 0.9 seconds. Box 2 will animate 100 pixels up and 8 pixels over, right? So, I mean, you notice I just have a lot of animations here where I'm animating either box 1, box 2. Here I'm animating box 5. Then I animate box 5 again, animate box 5 again, animate box 3, animate box 4. And then here I'm animating all of the boxes together. That's when they spin as a group. And then I don't remember what this one does. That's animating box 5 or box 4. And then here, this is where I'm actually changing the background color of all the boxes to be red, right? So just give me an example of, I'm not going to explain everything. Maybe in a video, I can go ahead and explain this entire concept of this, but we'll notice here that, each animation here, let's go ahead and, okay, so box 1 happened. Before that was done, this one started animating up, this one animated over, and then after this one animates over, it's going to animate up, and then it's going to animate over this way, right? And then after the purple animated over, the orange one flipped, the red one animated into the center. They all then animate as a group down here, and then the background changes to red. Oh, and then not only that, but here, that middle one scales up to kind of scale to the entire thing. And then it either changes them, in this case, it changes them back to the colors instead of red, but it reversed that entire animation, right? Pretty awesome, right? So as you see with Drift Timeline, it is much more powerful. And basically we're animating things based on classes. You actually have access to the entire Foundation 6 swatch selector here. Okay, so you can go to elements, and if you're familiar with all of this, you can use the entire swatch selector from Foundation 6. I think classes are the easiest way to do that because you can animate entire sets of things. For example, let's go ahead and look at that stagger animation all the way at the bottom here. Okay, so this particular animation was that was this one here. What's going on? What happened here? Not sure what I did there. All right, let's just go here. I put something on the page that broke it. Well, let's look. This animation here. So in this particular animation, now actually in this demo file, okay, I should note if you guys are using this this demo file and you want to recreate this, I'm using a stack that I haven't shipped yet to make this building this demo a little easier for me. This is a part of Slot Machine 4. It's a stack called Particle Generator. Should be released very soon. Now that I got Drift done, Particle Generator will be a part of Slot Machine 4. And basically what that does is it just creates I'm creating 72 of these containers. Basically if you didn't want to use Particle Generator, you just copy and paste this 72 times. So anyway, sorry about that. Particle Generator will be out soon. It'll be the next thing that gets shipped. It'll be a part of Slot Machine 4. Okay, so if you see that in the demo, that's why I added this little pen stack. So anyway, these squares are just called a box, right? And basically what I'm doing is I'm animating box. So I have a timeline. This is one animation that I'm animating on everything that's in the box. Okay, I do define a scope. We won't get into that yet. So you can kind of limit the scope of your animations. So what this is doing is it's moving them 40 pixels up, and then it's scaling them from 10% to 100%. Okay, so this is a from animation. And then down here, we do a stagger. Okay, so we're staggering, and we stagger each box by 0.1 seconds. And then Drift will detect kind of if your elements are in a grid pattern on the page, and you can state whether or not you want it to go from the start, the center, randomly. Actually, random's pretty cool. Let's see if with this. Not sure what I did to this page. Here, I'm gonna copy this out. I'm gonna put this in this other project that we made here. Oh, I don't have the box styles. Hold on one second. I just want this. Copy that. I'll just chuck that in there. All right. Now if I preview this, there it goes. So if you see here, I set the animation, the stagger, to be random, right? So let's go start. And what that's going to do is it's going to go from the beginning to the end, right? And it kind of, and here it goes, I have it set to yo-yo, so it'll go back and forth, right? And if we do edges, let's just show you what that does. Really, really cool. It goes from the edges and in. Man, this is just so cool. And obviously end. I can play around with Drift for a long time. You can get lost in all of the awesome stuff you can do with it. Okay. Are the animations light or heavy when it comes to sight speed? The animations are extremely lightweight. Okay. Like I said earlier, GreenSock, the library that I'm using, is the de facto standard for web animations. And it is faster, more lightweight than anything else out there. With that said, if you're trying to animate a 2 megapixel image, that's something to be thought of as well. I mean, that's going to take up resources. Okay. So, try to be like, for example, when I did these balloons, originally they were like 350 kilobytes a piece, PNGs. And I noticed animating them made the browser kind of go a little bit. So all I did is I made them WebPs. They're now like 60 kilobytes, and that really improved the animation. So if you're animating images, try to get those images as optimized as possible. But if you're animating things like text or animating, like these are just boxes. I mean, you can animate the crap out of 1,000 of these things and the browser won't beat it. It doesn't matter, right? So yeah, and also, I mean, it depends on what you're doing with images as well, right? So if you have a large image and you're just shifting it up, it's not as bad as, taking a megabyte image and trying to rotate it and flip it and shrink it and do all kinds of crazy stuff, right? So, so with that said, yes, they are very lightweight, but you can make them heavyweight if especially with images, okay? And there are other certain things like animating gradients is very, very, very resource intensive. Okay. That's just, doesn't matter what you're using. Animating a gradient will cause the browser to completely choke. Okay. So, be careful with the animating gradients. Other than that, animating SVGs, super lightweight. And I highly recommend using SVGs as much as you can with Drift, because it's just going to work beautifully. Okay. As you see this, I mean, this isn't, that's something that's just super cool. Morphing between two different SVGs, super lightweight, very performant. So there we go. Good question though. Thank you for asking that. Okay. Well, everybody, I went a little bit over, but, hopefully we got a really good first look at what Drift can do for us. I'm super excited. Is it available? It is available right now. You can go to my website. You have to know the URL. I put them in the chat. Just go to /drift or /drift-pro. And you can pick them up today and start playing with them. You get the demo files that I was playing around with right now. And they're in the download. I'll be working on videos this afternoon and tomorrow, and probably into next week. But it is available for purchase right now with everything you saw. I can't wait to see what you guys build with this. It's kind of like Foundation 6 swatches, but with animations. It really is limited only by your imagination and what you can do. And I can't wait. I know, like Massimo, you've built some stuff that I couldn't even think would be possible with swatches, right? I can't wait to see what you do with this, right? Because, I like giving you guys the tools that I know can provide you a lot of power. And I can't wait to see you guys unleash that power and do just mind-boggling things with that. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy Drift. Go out and get it today. It really helps me, obviously, because I like building awesome stuff for you guys. It's my most fun thing ever. So curious what's coming up next. So after Drift, I mentioned I got Slot Machine 4 coming. It will be the first paid upgraded slot machine, but it shouldn't take long. I already got the stacks kind of done. Just need to polish it up. I don't need to do like whole new product pages and all that jazz. So the launch will be much simpler on Slot Machine 4 than Drift. And then after that, we're all in on Total CMS 2 because we got to get that beta out there by the conference. So we got 5 months till the conference. We got to get that beta done. And so, yeah, going to go full in deep work mode on Total CMS 2 after that. So I'm really excited. Hopefully we'll see you guys on Friday at the Hangout. I'm sure this Friday we'll be talking a lot more about Drift. I'm probably going to be creating more demos and people are going to be shooting more ideas and we're going to be doing some proof of concepts and all kinds of stuff. So really excited about that. Hopefully you can join us on Friday. If you get Drift from now between then, join in, show me what you've done. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them live on the Hangouts. And if not, if you want to post on the community, we'll help you out there too. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Go out there and make something great.